hit the road, Sam. Don't you come back no more, no more, no more, no more. Hit the road, Sam. Don't you come back no more. Word, word. Yeah, yeah. Main. Big play in the middle. So unlike a riddle.
Hey guys. Hey guys, welcome to the August 1st edition of All Sports Everything Radio. The engineer over there is messing up my intro today, but it's okay. I'm going to let him live. I was in here having a complete rap session to old MC Light songs, and he was supposed to play Paper Thin for me and not the instrumental version. So he said that he just played the end because that song goes on forever. You remember back in the 90s, songs just kind of went on forever. But anyway, we're live. It's your host, Shana Renee, and we're going to get today's show going. I'm feeling really good today. Oddly enough, I have not eaten. I didn't get my usual green juice, so if I just pass out in the middle of the show, I don't know what to tell you guys. I hope that doesn't happen. I have a cup of water here. Hey, Fix Facebook Live, you guys watching. Hey, everybody tuning in on FLO Empire Radio. Thank you for joining. To our FLO Empire Radio listeners, I know that there are ads that play intermittently throughout the live stream. And one way to avoid the interruption is if you mute the video, but play the audio from the player down at the bottom of the screen. I know it's not totally in sync, but pick your poison, people. Do you want to have the dialogue interrupted, or do you just kind of want to glance at the visuals every once and again and have the audio playing so that way you don't miss anything? So those are your options. And I've gotten some feedback about that, and I meant to address it last week, and I forgot. So I'm bringing it up this week. People on FLO Empire Radio, let me know who's listening. Facebook Live, let me know who's watching. No one's joined us yet this week. What's going on? Anyway, I have a good show planned for us. I have a guest coming in. So in June, I was going to say last month, but it's in June. Sean Rooks, a former NBA player, passed away at the age of 46 from heart disease. And this is becoming a commonality or a common issue among former NBA players, especially big men. And his sister is coming in today to sit with us and talk to us about the dangers of heart disease among NBA players, specifically big men. But any of you listening, this is a disease that affects women and men of all ages. It's the number one killer amongst both genders, believe it or not. So I think that she'll have some interesting information to share and some interesting information that we can apply to our loved ones, our family, to hopefully protect us and, show us the warning signs and things that we can look out for to avoid suffering a similar grief. So that's an interview that I'm looking forward to doing. And also, as a result of her brother's death, the National Basketball Players Association instituted a new policy that better protects or gives retired players access to better health care. Because believe it or not, NBA, NFL, MLB, NHL, they don't really take care of their players after they retire. And as we know, everyone's not a LeBron James. Everyone's not a Michael Jordan. Everyone doesn't have these sustainable careers or build these, all of this wealth that helps them survive 20 years after they've retired. And unfortunately, the fate is that, as we know, a lot of these guys go broke. But often something that's not discussed as much is the health issues that they incur once they've been out of the league. So she's going to enlighten us on that issue. And before we get into that, I'm going to kick off the show with my top 3. You guys, last week I did not remind people to shoot their shot. So, hey, Steph, thanks for watching from LA. When are you coming back, Stephen? Thanks for joining all the way from LA. Last week I forgot to remind people to shoot their shot. And if you recall, last week was a busy show. That's when Michael Jordan, made a statement regarding the police shootings. And there was some other breaking news that just kind of dominated the show. I also had Megan Ann Wilson, the stylist, here. And so I didn't really have an opportunity to remind people to call in and shoot their shot. So this week, call in. If you have a question for me, I have an answer for you. It can be anything that you guys want to discuss. Just keep it clean and keep it respectful. The number to do that is 929-227-4646. Also, today's question of the day, we are now less than a week out from the Olympic Games. They begin on Friday. So the question of the day is, do you have Olympic fever? I want to know, are you excited that the Olympic Games are starting this week? Are you going to be locked in over the course of the next 3 weeks? How are you feeling about the Olympic Games, given the political, societal climate in our country right now? RNC ended going on a week and a half ago. The DNC ended on Thursday. Are you feeling very American? Are you going to be all jingoistic about, your American pride, your national pride? I want to hear from you. I'm really interested in this topic. I'll give you my opinion because this is part of my top 3. So I'll weigh in as well. But yeah, let me know how you're feeling. Again, the number is 929-227-4646. So kicking off this week's top 3 is Draymond Green. He is having the worst summer ever, okay? And if you actually include the NBA Finals as part of the summer, we can go back as far as that to, him targeting players, nether regions, and then getting subsequently suspended for that. And you can argue that he lost the NBA Finals for his team because of his absence and just, them being all out of sync. So there's that. Then last month, it's announced that he's arrested for assaulting a fan in a club. That's not necessarily great news. I think he was heckled. The guy who heckled him. Did the guy also go to Michigan State? Because I feel like that was like the interesting part of it. It wasn't even like a U of M guy who heckled him. But apparently that incident happened. And he had to apologize for that. And now the most recent thing that Draymond Green of the Golden State Warriors did was sent inappropriate pictures of his private parts to someone on Snapchat. Now, it was supposed to be a private photo, but it wasn't. And first he denied it. First he said, he was hacked. He can't win. And then he said, he came out and admitted that, you know what? I actually really effed up. Like, this was supposed to go to someone else. And instead, it went to everybody. I didn't see it. I'm not here for it. I have zero interest in looking at anybody's private parts, unsolicited. You know what I'm saying? And I just don't understand why this is still a thing. Like, guys, fellas watching, unless she specifically asks you to see that, don't send it. And I don't know if that was the case here at all. But do not just go sending unsolicited dick pics. Like, don't do it. It's not sexy at all. We don't think highly of you. We don't. Okay? Just an FYI. I thought I'd just like drop a little bit of knowledge in case anyone was ever wondering, and in case, you know, no one's ever kept it real with you. This is, I'm telling you, nobody wants that. So yeah, so now, you know, the Olympics start on Friday, so now they're going off to Brazil, and he has to now deal with the embarrassment of this. He needs to get it together. I like Draymond Green a lot. I'm a fan of his. I enjoy watching him play. I feel like he gives the Golden State Warriors a little bit of an edge and a personality, because otherwise Klay Thompson and Iggy Adala and Steph Curry seem a little bit boring. So Draymond Green is the one who's full of shenanigans. But I think he's just going, he's taken things too far lately. Seriously. He needs to hit the chill button. So that's my first top three, my number one in my top three. The second one is also related to the U.S. men's basketball team, and Carmelo Anthony's realization that he is way too old to be a part of the team. And the reaction in that video of them all on the plane singing that Vanessa Carlton song is hilarious to, I don't even know. Like, I've watched every medium posted on or every sports account posted on Instagram. Bleacher Reports may be the funniest because of all the editing that they did to it, but that video alone on its own without any editing is just one of the funniest videos that I've ever seen, because so much has been made about, you know, how much older he is than the rest of the team, how it seems out of place, you know, this being his fourth Olympics, him being the veteran on the squad, all of that. And if anything summed it up, then that sums it up, because you can kind of like still be considered cool, you know, even though you're a little older than everybody else. And you have to remember, like, Melo was born in, I feel like, 84. So he's, how much? I can't do that math. What is that? He's 32. Meanwhile, these other guys are like, thanks, Kayla. These other guys are like 26. You know, that's a generation gap. Melo's an 80s baby through and through. These other guys, 90s babies. It's a completely different ball game. So, yeah, the video at that point, it was like, I think my friend Adina, when I posted the video, she was like, this makes for a really great Beats by Dre ad. And I also think it makes for a really great Snickers ad, like when you just need to get away, because it looked like he wanted to be anywhere but there at that moment. And I was all the way here for it, because I want him to be anywhere but there, because I feel like if he gets injured, I'm not going to even be able to deal at all. Which reminds me, in speaking about Melo, I wanted to mention my big interview last week. So as some of you, probably all of you listening at this point have seen, last week I drove up to Bristol, Connecticut, and I interviewed Jemele Hill, the host of His and Hers, or the co-host of His and Hers. Thank you for the applause, rounds of applause. And she agreed to sit down with me, and we talk about her journey as a woman in sports, as a Black woman in sports, you know, working for ESPN, the career that she's built for herself, and being one of the standout journalists within sports. And I also asked her about the Knicks, because anyone who watches the show knows that she is really hard on the Knicks. She comes for the Knicks, she comes for Melo, and she does not hold back. And as a Knicks fan who reps for my squad hard, there is no way that I could sit down with her, someone who I have defined as a known hater of the Knicks, and not call her out on it. And she actually said, when I asked her that question, she actually said, this is my favorite question that you've asked me the whole time. And she answered it honestly. And honestly, I didn't have a reason to disagree with what she was saying, which is always what you hate. When someone comes for your team, you always wish you had a rebuttal, especially when you know that someone's team has been more successful than yours in the past. I don't know, 30 some odd years. The last Knicks championship was won in 73. So 40, what is that? 43 years? Yeah. So what am I going to say to her? As a Pistons fan, they've won in the last century. They've won in this century. So I really didn't have much of defense. But it was still great to chop it up with her. I can't wait for you guys to see that interview. I'm hoping to have a final version to share within the next 2 weeks. It was a ton of fun. She's super down to earth. I feel like the persona that she gives off on her show, for anyone who watches and is a fan, will appreciate her in person as well. It's not anything that, she turns on when the cameras come off and then she turns off when the cameras go off. And that's not easy to do. As someone who is very locked in before this mic goes on, before we go live every week, I can tell you, Kayla can probably attest to this, I kind of have multiple personalities. And so I'm definitely not one of those people where if you catch me outside of this, I'll be exactly who I am as I am right now. And so and this is now my second interaction with her. And she just seems like a very genuine, real person. And I appreciated that about her. So yeah, look out for that. Look out for that interview in the next couple of weeks or so, because we talk about a lot of things that I think will be of interest to you. All right. Third on my top 3 is, and you guys listening, don't forget to call in 929-227-4646. I want to hear from you guys today. And this one relates to the question of the day, which is, do you have Olympic fever? Let me know if your answer is yes. Let me know if your answer is no. Since I like to answer the questions that I pose to you, here's how I'm feeling about everything. My quick answer is no. And here's why. I have a very hard time separating everything that's transpired within this country, most recently in terms of the shootings that have gone on, and then also as a result of watching the crazy circus of the Republican National Convention, and the fact that, I was going to say Donald Trump, not Don King. Donald Trump is actually a Republican nominee. He's a presidential nominee. Like, people can vote in the booths in November and possibly elect him as our next president. That doesn't make me feel great about the state of this country at all. He's a xenophobic. He's a sexist. He's racist. I just don't feel like he has any redeemable qualities about himself. And that makes me, as an American, as a woman, and as a Black woman, question just the true values of the United States of America. And then on top of that, publicly, I'll go on record and say that I'm not the biggest Hillary fan. And I, as a woman, have a really hard time rooting for her and seeing her victory of this historical nomination as a celebration for myself and as an indication of what lies ahead for my future. I don't feel like she represents me at all. I felt a whole lot more pride when Barack Obama, our first African-American male president, was elected. I was better able to join in that celebration and identify with that. And I feel like as a Black woman, my racial identity as a Black woman certainly supersedes my gender. And there's just something about Hillary that I'm still, not 100% there yet. Does that mean that I'm not going to vote? I'm going to vote in November because the alternative is just too crazy to risk. But you know, there's the hashtag I'm with her, and then there's the hashtag I guess I'm with her, and that's the category that I fall into. So considering all of that that's transpired, and as we push towards this Olympic period, this Olympic season that's supposed to, you know, have all of this American pride and this heightened sense of love for our nation and who we are as a people, and it's supposed to unite us, I feel like it's a complete farce, because that's not where we are right now. We're not a united nation at all. I will root for the athletes. Obviously, I'm going to do some extensive Olympic coverage on my blog, and to be completely transparent with you guys, I'm really going to only focus primarily on the Black women competing in Rio. I identify with them. I'm rooting for them. I'm proud of them. So that's a series that I'm working on, and my contributors and myself are really going to put in the most energy toward supporting. But just in general, I just feel like I would be faking it if I was all like, yay, go America, Team USA. And I feel like for a sporting event that's on a global platform, and it's not like, you know how growing up, if your parents argue or you don't have any food on your table and y'all are struggling, your lights are out, bills aren't paid, all of that kind of stuff, you keep that in-house. That's not for anybody else to know besides the people that live in your household. You know, that's family business, and that's not anything to be shared with anyone else. This, unfortunately, is something that the entire world is privy to. It's not anything that we can just kind of like sweep behind the rug and hope that if we put on some concealer or some makeup, we can cover the black eye that we suffered last night. Like, that's not what's happening with America right now. Like, everyone knows that Trump is running for president. Everyone's aware of Hillary and the emails and Benghazi and all of that kind of stuff. Everyone knows about the shootings, the mass shootings, the issues we have with gun control, the issues we have with our police and law enforcement. Obama was over in Poland following the Alton Sterling and Philando Castile shootings, and had to interrupt his trip to address it. And then he had to interrupt his trip again to address the Dallas shooting. That's embarrassing on a international level. So now we're supposed to go to Rio and just act like everything's all good. Everything's not all good. That's how I feel. How do you guys feel? I want to hear from you. Am I just like bugging out? Do you feel me on this? Is there anyone that can make me look at things a little bit differently? Have any of you even given thought to the Olympics? Like, what do you feel? I want to hear from you. 929-227-4646. Call in. Let me know. What else is happening in sports today? Hey, Silas. He says on FLO Empire Radio. And for those of you who are listening, there's also an app, which I don't think I've ever actually plugged on All Sports Everything Radio before. But there's an app that you can take us with you on the go. So you can go into iTunes or Google Play, enter FLO Empire Radio, download it, and there you go. And then we're in your pocket. So Silas commented and said, Mello is not, it's for none of the nonsense. Yeah, so he's commenting on Mello and his reaction to the team singing Vanessa Carlton. Yeah, I don't blame. I mean, do you blame Mello for not being here for the nonsense? I couldn't deal with that either. Honestly, that's not a song that I was ever into at all. So if I was on that plane, I would have had this same exact reaction to Mello. Like, get me out of here. Please, guys. Please tone it down. What else? Oh, I have a Twitter comment? Oh. I can't hear. Question of the day. Oh, someone says not really, but that'll change when the games are on. So somebody, how come I'm not getting my tweets? What's going on? Oh, there it is. Late. So, Hubri D says, not really, but that'll change when the games are on. Regarding, do you have Olympic fever? Considering the political and societal climate of America right now. Hey, my guest just walked in. So yeah, you guys, and that's how I feel too. Like, the Olympics is not necessarily anything that you get super hype about. I feel like for the most part, and even though the trials were going on and I tuned in from the gymnastics, I tuned in for track and field, and there are a ton of athletes participating or competing, I should say, that I'm a huge fan of. But at the same time, I just can't get with it 100%. Like, I'm just not feeling it yet. And I know that once the games are on, I'll watch a lot of it. Because I just love sports and it just comes out of me. And I feel like there's a part of me, the feelings that I have now in terms of feeling conflicted is similar to how I felt about the NFL when they were going through their whole domestic violence scandal. And I felt like their reaction to it was not sufficient at all. But yet I knew that there was no way that I wasn't going to watch the games once they started in September. So here we are once again, where I feel like there's this heavy cloud kind of hanging over the Olympic Games, and not necessarily the Olympics, because it's not like, we're Russia or we're Brazil where we're having all of these issues over there. But just given all of the political things happening in America and what the Olympics stand for and represent, as far as it's supposed to be all of this pride, this national pride. I can't get with it yet. I'm not there, you guys. All right, so call in 929-227-4646. I want to hear from you. That is the question of the day. Do you have Olympic fever? Considering the current political and societal climate of America? I want to hear from you. 929-227-4646. And then also, don't forget, shoot your shot. We'll do it later. Tweet me a question at It's Shana Renee, ITSSHANARENEE, or leave a question on FLOEmpireradio.com, or also on my Facebook Live. You can also leave a question. Hey, Leslie, thanks for tuning in. We're going to take a quick break. I'm going to get my guests settled, and then we'll be back. Give us about a minute, guys. Talk to you soon.
I do still this time. Did you still this time?
Hot damn, ho, here we go again. Suckers steal a beat when you know they can't win. You stole the beat, are you having fun? Now me and the odds gonna show you how it's done. You are what I label as a nerve plucker. You're plucking my nerves, you MC sucker. I thought I ought to tell you, better yet warn, that I ain't like a stock and my word is born. Like James, killing everybody in sight. The Coke Street Six, the name is Light. After this jam, I really don't give a damn, cause I'ma run and tell your whole damn clan that you're a
beat biter, dope style taker. Tell you to your face, you ain't nothing but a faker. Beat biter, dope style taker. Tell you to your face, you ain't nothing but a faker.
Milk's bodyguard is my bodyguard too. You wanna get hurt? Well, this is what you do. You put your left foot up and then your right foot next. Follow instructions, don't lose the context. 30 days a month, your mood is rude. We know the cause of your bloody attitude.
Beat biter, dope style taker. Tell you to your face, you ain't nothing but a faker. Beat biter, dope style taker. Tell you to your face, you ain't nothing but a faker.
Your style is smooth, even for a cheap mic. You should've won a prize as I rock him. Sounding like here's a milk bone, a sign of recognition. Don't turn away, I think you should should listen close, don't boast. You said you wasn't bragging. You fucking liar, you're chasing a chuck wagon. The only way you learn you have
guys,
to be taught.
we're
That
back.
if a beat is not for sale, then it can't be bought.
Hey guys, welcome back to All Sports Everything Radio. Joining me is Takara. Rooks. Okay, so you have the same last name as your brother. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I'm so happy to have you here. So before we went to break, the question that I posed today is, do you have Olympic fever, given everything going on in our country? And your answer was?
I don't have Olympic fever. Sorry.
No, don't apologize.
I'm excited. I'm excited for, U.S. to win. We always win, gymnastics, track. But I am not happy that it's in Rio with all the health issues with the water and all of that. That bothers me because what's going to happen years from now when people end up with disease and cancer and all of these kinds of things?
Sorry. He's saying move closer to the mic.
Okay. So that's just my, environmental concern.
Oh, okay, so yours is more environmental,
yes.
Not necessarily political or societal.
No.
Well, I think that's legit. I mean, and that just adds to, I guess, the pot of the complications associated with the Olympic Games and just kind of like everything going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why allow it to be,
Yeah.
when they were pitching it and knowing that this was going to be Brazil, which is Brazil is a wonderful country, but it's not. It's very much known that Rio and the water system is not the best.
Well, last year or 2 years ago when they had the World Cup there, people anticipated some of these issues, and it seemed like it went over pretty well.
Because it's Rio.
Yeah. I mean, I visited Rio and I had a ball. I didn't feel unsafe. I've, read that some athletes have already gotten robbed while they've been there. And that's a real issue because when we were on the beach, we saw some young kids, like 5, 6 years old, go into people's bags and purses as they went into the ocean. And, Rio, crime, theft is very real, but I feel like the same way that they tell people that visit New York to be mindful and watch your things, you just have to use common sense.
I agree.
That's it. All right, but that's not why you're here. So let's talk about why you're here.
Okay.
So your brother Sean passed away in June.
Yes.
Unexpectedly from what they've now...
Well, we believe it's heart disease.
Okay.
The final autopsy is not back, but the preliminary autopsy said heart disease and an enlarged heart.
Okay. So for those of them listening who may not be familiar with your brother, give us a little background information about Sean.
So Sean Rooks played 14 years in the NBA. He played for many teams. He played for the Minnesota Timberwolves. He played for the Lakers. He played for the Clippers. He played for the Magic. He did a brief stint in Atlanta. He went back to Dallas and Orlando, and then he played a little bit overseas in Spain.
Okay.
And after his career ended, he coached in for the D League in Sioux Falls in Utah.
Mm-hmm.
And then he ended up when he passed. He had just left the Philadelphia 76ers as the player development coach. And on the day he passed, he had an interview with the Knicks for an assistant coaching position. And if you knew Sean, his favorite team was the Knicks. So we were really, really, he didn't tell a lot of people.
Wow.
So we were really excited that they were looking at him, and we were hopeful that he would get the position just because it was his dream and his love, and also that he would be closer to me since I live in New York.
But he was born in New York.
He was born in New York.
Right.
So Sean and I have the same father, different moms.
Okay.
So my father is from New York as well, and he's from Queens. And so he was born in New York. And then when his mom and my father separated, she moved cross country to California.
Okay.
And so that's where he grew up. So he's mostly, he's a West Coast kid. He went to school in high school in Fontana, which is kind of San Bernardino Valley area, and then he went to college at University of Arizona, where he became Sean Rooks, the ball player.
So this issue is something that's very near and dear to you, because I also read that your father passed away in January of this year.
Yes.
From a heart attack?
From a heart attack. We believe it was a heart attack. Well, it was a heart attack.
Okay.
We're not really sure what happened. My stepmother, I just think in her grief, just decided not to do an autopsy. She was just, devastated because my father wasn't sick. So I just think, when people pass, I wanted it, but it wasn't my place to kind of, say that. And it was just a hard time. He went quick. But in hindsight, I really wish that I had pushed, because maybe had we found out that he possibly could have had heart disease, then it was something that my brother and I could have talked about. And now I worry for me, but Sean has 2 children who play basketball. Okay. And my nephew is very tall. He's large. He's 7'1". So it just seems that, he's taller than Sean. The larger, the taller you are, the more stress, I guess, it puts on your heart. So the more you kind of have to be aware. And I know my nephew's not necessarily thinking about that.
How
because
old is he?
He's 21.
Okay.
So he's, playing ball in college, living his life, thinking that he's got years and years ahead of him, which he should think that. But the reality is that, heart disease is the silent killer. It kills so many people. It takes African Americans, white, Hispanic. It just knocks men, women. Yeah. It knocks everybody off across the board. It's not, like a particular disease that focuses on one nationality or ethnicity or gender. So it's something that I have kind of gotten to be more cognizant of, especially, like I said, because my father passed, and then 3-4 months later my brother passed, and so now myself, I have a daughter. So I'm just wondering, is this in our DNA makeup?
So I was going to ask, is this something that could be hereditary?
Yes.
Or okay.
Yes, definitely. Yes.
So are there symptoms that people can look out for?
That's the thing. This is why it's called the silent killer. Usually there are not symptoms. Sean didn't have any symptoms.
Because your brother was, everything that I've read about him said that he was basically in the best shape of his life. He'd been, he'd lost weight since he stopped playing, was pretty healthy, active.
He was healthy. He was active. So his job was assistant development, player development. And so with that, he literally had to play with the players. So he had to develop the players. So he had to work with them and train with them and do, suicides drills, and all the drills. So, and they're young, they're young players. So, and he was 46. So he had to keep up with the players. So he was very active. He worked out. He ate right. He, watched what he did. He didn't smoke. I mean, he had an occasional drink here and there, but, he wasn't, he didn't have the lifestyle that one would think somebody would pass away from at 46 with a heart attack.
Right.
I mean, heart attack. I guess that's pretty much what it was.
Right. And 46, to your point, is so young. And it's something that we've, Anthony Mason died from a heart attack. And then there was Daryl Dawkins. So this is something that we're seeing is becoming more common among NBA players. And I feel that it's interesting because in the NFL, there's so much focus and emphasis on CTE and concussions and how the NFL and the NFLPA don't provide enough health insurance and benefits for retired athletes post, 5 years after they're out of the game or whatever it is. But with the NBA, we don't hear these types of conversations at all, And I think that with the passing of your brother, we saw that the NBA Players Association implemented new health insurance policies for their players. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
So, the narcissist in me would like to think that is because of my brother. And obviously it's not because of my brother, but I think that there's been a lot of conversation and there's been a lot of talk about it. And so hopefully, his passing was one of the final straws for people to say, all right, look, we have to do something. Because it's the reality is when you are in the NBA and you become a player. And I watched this with my brother. He was drafted fairly young. And he didn't know a lot, as far as what he should do in his life. And there's no conversation conversation about, all right, you should manage your money, or you should
Right.
save this, or you should put money aside for when you retire, and you should focus on your health. And so these things are just not there. It's just not conversation pieces that occur. And so when these players leave the league, it's just kind of like they're just dropped off.
Right.
And what happens now? What do I do now? Even when they're playing and they get their physicals, a lot of the paperwork, the medical paperwork, goes to the team. They don't have access
And
to
that
their
was,
own
that
medical records.
That was really
It's crazy.
startling to me, because there was an article in the Boston Globe that I read in preparation for this interview, and Cherokee Parks, former NBA player, hugely outspoken about this.
Yes.
And following the passing of Darryl Dawkins and Moses Malone, they offered free health screenings. And Cherokee Parks was one of the players who took advantage of it. And he went on record as saying, we are all prepared to get to the NBA since we were 12, 13 years old. And basically, when you get to college and you play in the NBA, you're babied. You're shown what doctors to go to, don't pay for anything. You go in there, and when you get the results back, you don't even get the results. They go to your team physician.
Yes.
And then when you leave the league, there's no exit strategy health-wise, no physical examination when you leave. And you also have no medical records for your entire time in the league because the team has possession of it.
Yes.
That is insane.
It's very insane, but it's commonplace. And I don't want to speak for the players, but I'm sure that there are some players that are just like, wow, okay, this isn't good, but I'm healthy, we'll figure it out when the time comes. Because there's always the thought that there's tomorrow.
Right.
And the reality is there's not always tomorrow. And we're one of the few countries that just kind of do it like that. I know in Germany, when people leave their professional sports, they have that. They have kind of an exit where they train them down and they work out less, and they kind of show them what to do, and it's like it's an exit strategy, and it just doesn't happen in the NBA.
So under the new rule that was voted unanimously last month, for all retired NBA players with at least 3 years of service in the league, they'll get full insurance.
Yes.
Up until the ages of 65 when they qualify for Medicare.
Yeah, Medicare.
And that's something that is unprecedented, not only for the NBA, but within the NFL. Listen to these stats, guys. For NFL players, as we know, and this is public record, is that, the NFL's health insurance policy is one of the worst out there. And if players play for 3 years or more, they make pension, and then they are entitled to only 5 years of health insurance. Wow. Only 5 years. And the average NFL player plays less than 3 years. So everyone else, whether you leave the league because of concussions or just injuries, and these are chronic things that are debilitating throughout the course of your life, and particularly within the NFL, CTE isn't detectable until many years after your career. And that's why the NFL is embroiled in all of these lawsuits now, and something that the players associations and the leagues and the players are trying to figure out a way that they can improve their policies. But then in the NHL, 68% of players are Canadian, and they have free health care over there. So this isn't really something that affects most of the majority of NHL players. And then within baseball, they say that if a player plays less than 4 years, they receive 2 years of health insurance.
Wow.
And if they play 4 or more years, they have an indefinite health plan. So for anyone that has, a very short career within any of these professional leagues, they just cast you aside and they're like, good luck.
Pretty much.
So financially, you're not stable. And to your point, and to Cherokee Park's point, they don't really guide you and provide you with a foundation in order for you to maintain your health. Yeah. And as you get older, obviously your health is going to decline, and a lot of these issues that have bothered you throughout your career are going to resurface, whether it's physical, whether it's mental. So I'm happy, unfortunately your brother passed, but it's good to see that they are, particularly in the NBA, they are taking steps to help hopefully prevent this from happening and affecting more families in the future. Did your brother have issues with health insurance? Is this something that you felt like if it was in place
Honestly, I do not know. This is not something that we kind of talked about. When my father passed away, because I'm kind of the mother hen, I asked him, I didn't even think about health insurance. I just asked him, are all your ducks in a row? Is your will okay? Are the kids okay? Is is your life insurance okay? And he's like, yeah, everything's fine. Everything's fine. It didn't even dawn on me to ask him about his health insurance and what happens. And, he was healthy, but these guys play 85 games a season. They're running up and down on a hard court. Their knees are affected, their ankles, their joints, their hearing. Everything is affected. It is really, really hard on the body. And I would watch my brother, and they're large people. Right. He was 6'11", and so the average person is not that tall, and I would see him, even though he was healthy, he would have to kind of ice things and soak, and they lumber around as they get older. And it's just amazing to me that this is not something that's just a lot more prevalent. And I think that, ball players are so focused on, okay, what am I going to do after I leave? How am I going to make a living? How am I going to eat? How am I going to take care of my kids? I don't think that they're necessarily thinking about their health insurance because they are so young. And it's not something that most people pay attention to until they need it. And that's with everybody. You don't really think about your health insurance or your deductible or how much your copay is going to be until you have a surgery coming up. And then you start going through your files of what is this covered and when and what do I meet my deductible? And so the average person is like that. It's just not something you think about day to day.
And I also feel that men aren't as proactive about going to get screenings, going to doctor regularly, going for their annual physicals and checkups and that sort of thing.
I agree. Unless it is mandated for their particular job, what they're doing.
So let's talk about, I know you started a fund in your brother's honor.
I did. I started a GoFund, a twofold GoFund. So my brother was an alumni of University of Arizona. And so there's an endowment fund created in his name, the Sean Rooks Memorial Endowment Fund. Okay. And that was started by the University of Arizona's Black Alumni Association, and it's to provide scholarships and monies for students that are coming to the University of Arizona in his name. He was a huge Arizona fan. He supported Arizona. That was just his alma mater. It was his time, and he loved it. And the GoFund is also raising money for heart disease. Because as I, were researching and all these things that were coming in, I kind of wanted to do something in his name. Like I said, I didn't want his death to be in vain. Right. So I started this GoFund to see if we can get money for scholarships, to get money to raise awareness for heart disease, because it is, as I said, the silent killer. People just do not know. There's screenings for high blood pressure, cholesterol, and all of that together can create heart disease. But if you don't know you have one, or it's kind of like a trifecta, and a lot of people just aren't aware. And so I just wanted to do something in my brother's name, in his honor and his memory.
So where can people go to learn more about it?
So they can go to GoFundMe.com / Sean Rooks, and Sean is spelled SEAN. Rooks is ROOKS. And so we're asking people to donate whatever it is that they can. Sean's number was 45, so we're asking people to donate if they can at least $45 for his number. He kept the same number through the league, and that was his number. So this is, my honoring my best friend, because he was my everything.
What kind of brother was he?
He was an amazing brother. Yeah. He was an amazing brother. He was just a great guy all around. He was what everybody called the gentle giant, because he was so big, but his heart, he was so tall, but his heart was so big, and he was just a really warm, caring person. And he used to call me Bear Claw because he said that my hands are actually the same size as my brother's hands. So I know, right? And I'm not nearly.
Did you play basketball?
I did not play basketball.
Did not play? I
ran track.
Okay,
yeah, I ran track. I did track. So he would call me Bear
So he
Claw.
just had feminine hands.
He just had feminine hands. We'll call it like that.
He had feminine hands. That's all.
And so, but I was, even though he was my older brother, I was his protector because my personality is a lot stronger and is a lot more dominant. So I protected him because he was just such a good person. And I was always, he was, not naive in the sense, but I was always concerned that someone would take his and use his celebrity for their benefit because he gave whatever it is that he can. He did for anybody, and he was just a great, great person. So, and we just had a lot of fun together. He was my soulmate.
Yeah. I'm very, very close with my brother, so I can relate to that brotherly, sisterly bond. Yeah.
And so, it was hard losing my father in January, but he and I were there together. But in June when I lost him, I didn't know what to do. I was devastated.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah.
So have you talked to anyone at the Players Association or any former players about your fundraising efforts?
Yes. I've spoken to a few players. I'm in contact with Elton Brand, who Sean and him were Philly. But they were friends before that.
Okay.
And so he's been helpful with me, and he's like, his name was Wookie. So they was like, whatever Wookie needs, we got. Cedric Sabalas, who used to play with him, he and I are in contact, and he is helpful. Sean Elliott. So and these were all people that attended the funeral.
Okay.
And that reached out to me and said, whatever it is that you need, whatever it is that we can do for his mom, Deborah, who's in California. They've just been in constant contact and just been a great support. And it's good. It makes me feel good because I know that if it were in reverse, Sean would do the exact same thing for their family.
Have you been paying attention to what's going on with Chris Bosh's health issues and
Somewhat.
Yeah. And I know it's interesting just because so 2 years ago or 2 seasons ago, he was diagnosed with a blood clot, and then he returned. And at that point, no one knew if he would be able to play in the league again. And it seemed like he made a full recovery. But then this season, it resurfaced, and then they had to shut him down for the rest of the season. And he wasn't thrilled with that, and he wanted to get back out there. So I feel like this has still been unresolved. I think that the issue there is related to his medication and the blood thinners that they prescribe him, and some of the dangers associated with that. And so I feel like the league does have a heightened sensitivity, which I respect. I mean, the last thing we want is a repeat of like a Hank Gather situation in which a player collapses out on the court or during a game or something. So I think that the Heat and the NBA are doing the right thing in protecting themselves and, trying to keep him alive. He's a father. He's a husband. So health should definitely come first. But given what you know about the league and the Players Association and a lot of stuff that we don't know about, I was just interested to see like if you've been following.
I have, and I know he wants to play.
Yeah,
at the end of the day, he's a ball player and he wants to get out there and do his job, and it's his craft, and from what I do know of people who do this sport, it is their love. They eat, live, die, breathe basketball. And so I'm sure he's like, well, look, if this is what it has to be, then I want to play. But I think that the NBA is correct because there is so much coverage and there's so much awareness now. People are watching.
And to be liable for that,
yes,
that's not something that you want to risk. It's not worth it.
It's not worth it. It's not worth it. So I'm glad that the NBA is kind of taking a step and saying, look, we need to kind of figure this out and watch this. And because, I wonder if there were a time when that wouldn't necessarily happen. And, with social media and just awareness now, it's just a lot prevalent. And I think the older NBA may have just said, okay, well, go ahead.
I agree. I mean, bringing the NFL back up again to your point, social media is something that has really pushed all of these concussion issues to the forefront, because you can't just, work behind the scenes and not expect news to come to surface, especially if it's negative or it affects a large group of people or a large number of people. So it's something that eventually is going to be released out there, and you want to look like you've been on top of it, and you want to be proactive. You don't want to take the stance like the NFL and behind the scenes, try to cover up everything, because then you find yourself in a world of mess.
Liable in lawsuits.
Exactly. Thank you so much. Is there anything else you want to share? Give everyone the GoFundMe information again.
It's GoFundMe.com /Sean Rooks, SeanRooks. If you have difficulty remembering that, if you just Google GoFund and put in Sean Rooks, it pops up.
And we'll also
put the link up.
Okay, and great. Share it on wherever you see this interview. The link to the GoFundMe will also be there. Okay.
And I just want to thank everybody for the people who have donated, the people who have been just sharing this, and just the interest in my Shawnee.
Oh, is there a expiration date?
No, we've got it so that there's no expiration date. Okay.
So you guys, GoFundMe.com /Sean Rooks, SeanRooks. Is there anything else besides that you want to share?
I do want to say we don't have a end date, but we are trying to raise the money by his birthday, which is September 9th.
Okay, so September 9th. So that gives us about 2 months.
6 weeks.
6 weeks.
Today's August 1st.
Yeah, that gives you about 6 weeks to pull your pennies together and support this this important cause. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. All right, you guys, we're going to take a quick break, and we will be right back with my power recap. I know you can't wait. All Sports Everything Radio. Be back in a second.
L-Y-T-E. I am the light. L-Y-T-E. I am the light. Do you understand the metaphoric phrase light as a rock? It's explaining how heavy the young lady is. You know what I'm saying, King?
Yes, my brother, but I would consider light as a rock a simile because of the usage of the word as. And now, directly from the planet of Brooklyn, MC Light as a rock.
Must I say it again? I said it before. Move out the way when I'm coming through the door. Me, heavy, as light as a rock. Guys watch, even some of the girls clock. Step back, it ain't that type of party. No reply if you ain't somebody. Get out my face, don't want to hear no more. If you hate rejection, don't try to score. First base, you ain't got what it takes. You smile, you wink, you big fake flake. You're so pathetic, you make my stomach turn. You beg, you borrow, now you have to learn. I am the light. L-Y-T. I am the light. L-Y-T. Light as a rock, or I should say a boulder, rolling down your neck, pounding on your shoulders. Never shall I be an MC called a wannabe. I am the light, L-Y-T-E. This is the way it is, don't ever forget. Hear the rhyme someone else and you know they've been all in the way, just little obstacles. Chew them up, spit them out just like popsicles. Suckers out of my way, we're not on the same wavelength. I show stability, potential, and strength. On the other hand, you are weak and unruly. Can never be a spot cause you're just a plain stoolie. I am the light. L-Y-T. I am the light. L-Y-T. I'm a slave to the rhythm. Death rhymes on the microphone is what I'm giving. Yes, I am a rock and you are just a pebble. Milk turn up the bass and rock adjusting levels. If a rap can paint 1,000 words, then I can paint 1,000,000. Wait, light is capable of painting up a zillion raps. And when I say it, this is what I mean. Audio 2 and the alliance on the scene. And I like to say what's up to my producer, King of Chill. Party people, are you ready? Jam if you will. Never underestimate Light the MC. I am a rapper who is here to make things the way they're meant to be. The word ultimate. I'm here to take the title, but I had a little trouble.
You know what that means. Time for the power recap. Let's get into it. All right, you guys. Episode 3 of Power took an interesting twist. Many interesting twists. It started out in D.C., which was completely unexpected and very different for us. Kayla, do you mind twisting that? Somehow I threw it off. Which is very different for us. So there's that. We found out we've located Kanan. We know where he is. He's alive. And then the other thing is the side hustle that Tasha is helping Tommy and Holly set up. And then all types of like domestic stuff going on with Ghost and Angela, which is least important and something that I'm not interested in at all. So tune in. I mean, weigh in, you guys. I want to hear from you. 929-227-4646. Let me hear what you guys thought about Power. I'm also still taking calls about the question of the day in the Olympics. And don't forget, you can shoot your shot. All right. So Power. Here were my takeaways from this week's episode. One, I'm happy that something is finally happening because I did agree with people who felt like it was moving a little slow. And now we just kind of got introduced into 2 new main storylines that are probably going to carry us throughout the rest of the season. And I could foresee it taking us other places as well, maybe even beyond this season. But the first thing I need to say is how much time has passed between the season finale and where we are now. Ghost still has bruises on his face, and yet Ghost still has bruises on his face. Kanan is laid up and he's still like recovering. But Ghost and Angela have moved full steam ahead in not only moving in together, but also look like basically buying an apartment or renting an apartment, which, hey, we know in New York City, nothing happens that quickly. I feel like less than a week has passed, and that's really confusing to me. We have a caller. Thanks for calling All Sports Everything Radio. Who's on the line?
This is Leslie calling about the question of the day.
Oh, hey, Leslie.
Hey.
Thanks for calling. What are your thoughts on the Olympics?
My thoughts are I'm totally here for the Olympics.
Okay.
I get very emotional watching the Olympics because I have so much respect for these athletes who've worked so hard to get to where they are, and I just feel like I understand we're in a really, volatile time in our country, but this is the one moment for 2 weeks I'm hoping we can kind of put that stuff aside and all rally together around these athletes, especially under these difficult circumstances, because it seems as though Rio just really couldn't get their stuff together and really halfway have it together.
Right.
So it's not like they're going down there and it was, the same way it was in London where they went over there and everything was, just peachy keen and they were having a great time. It's going to be under some difficult circumstances that these athletes are going to be competing. And that's, for all countries that are involved.
Right.
So I'm a big Olympics fan. I just, and especially the Summer Olympics, I really, really enjoy watching it. I try to keep up with it as much as possible. So I'm here for it. Any other time I'm all about what's going on in our country, and I'm not happy about all of that. But the Olympics to me is just something really super special. So.
Well, thanks for calling. I appreciate you weighing in.
Sure.
I'm not necessarily there. Like, I completely agree with supporting the athletes and rooting for them. But I just am too caught up in everything else that's going on here. And I feel like it's a lot and it's heavy. And I just can't, in good conscience, just kind of like separate the two just because all of a sudden, the Olympics are going on. Because once the Olympics end, we still have a presidential election that's happening and people still need to get out there and vote. Hillary and Donald are still going to be going at each other. Our black men are still going to be getting gunned down in the streets, and I feel like that's my priority. So while I wish I could just be like, yeah, let's all hold hands and sing Kumbaya, I'm not quite there yet. But I appreciate your point of view. Thanks for calling.
I get yours too.
All right. Thanks for calling.
You got it. Bye-bye.
Bye. Yeah, I mean, I know that that's a popular point of view, which I think is great, but I can't. Like, I'm not there. I just can't fake it either. So yeah, back to Power. Oh my goodness, I lost my train of thought, you guys. Oh yeah, the timing of the show. I'm not quite sure where we are in terms of where last season ended and where we are present day. And I feel like that's throwing me off because that seems very unrealistic in terms of like all of these incidents or events transpiring in a week, 2 weeks, a month. I don't know how much time it is. Because if we recall, so last week, it was basically like the next day after everything that went down in the fire and Sean being killed, that they then introduced the kids to Angela, which I feel like in real life, if something that tragic, if this guy who's basically like been your son's big brother is suddenly murdered, are you then going to just like disrupt his life even further by oh, and by the way, your father has a new girlfriend and you're going over there to meet her and spend the night? That doesn't seem realistic to me whatsoever. And if it is realistic, then it's terrible parenting. Come on. Like, what are you doing? So that has thrown me off, and it's something that I've been kind of like mulling over and questioning in the back of my mind. But because I just love the show so much, I try to just let things go and not get hung up on minor details like that. But that's something that I feel like as the storyline progresses is really important to know. Where are we in timing wise? So there's that. Then, back to DC. So Anika Noni Rose, who has always played like these super dignified characters, she was Disney's princess for goodness sake, shows up in the most thuggish, ruggish character that I'm sure none of us ever expected her to play. And she's basically channeling her inner Kima from The Wire. If you remember Kima from The Wire, she was the lesbian cop. Very butch and just kind of like no nonsense. And I feel like that's who Anika Noni Rose's character, Jukebox is her name, was giving us. And they're opening up the show with a robbery going down at a bodega or a pharmacy. She pulls up in a patrol car, walks in. You think that she's going to arrest the two guys who are holding up the pharmacy, and she's in on it. And so she shoots the guy behind she has the one guy who's holding up the pharmacy worker / owner, whoever he was, shoot him, and then she shoots that guy. And then we just kind of discover that her and Kanan go way back. She knows Ghost from back in the day. They all grew up together. And what I love about this storyline, other than it was very unexpected, is that there are a lot of, themes being intertwined into this show now, in terms of her character being a cop. And when her and Kanan sat down and she's like, you need to tell me what's going on with you. You need to be honest with me about why you're here and what happened. He's like, I can't trust you. You're not black anymore. You're blue. Basically saying that she's the police. And she's working for the other side. And obviously, given everything in the country with Blue Lives Matter versus Black Lives Matter, that line really stood out to me in last night's episode. I also think that there's something to be said about her being a very corrupt cop, because we know that they exist, and her working the inside to affect the outside, and basically being a criminal and contributing to, the murder rate and all of the things that we see perpetuated within these Black communities. So I think that that's interesting, and I wonder how deep and how far we'll go with that storyline. And I feel like Courtney Kemp, the writer and the creator of the show, really has a unique opportunity to explore some in-depth themes that are happening in society, and I'm excited to see if she goes there. And then it makes me wonder, will Anika Noni Rose's character Jukebox help Kanan get back at Ghost? Because it seems like there's something there. Like, she was never really feeling him. She was like, how could you, like, he never really had any street in him. So she's not like she really respected Ghost. So as someone who let Kanan into her home, and something that her girlfriend said is not typical of her personality, for her to open her door up to Kanan and care for him, that says that they have a special bond. So she seems to be down for whatever. So we'll see how her storyline evolves over time. 929-227-4646. Call into the show. I want to hear from you guys. Weigh in on Power. Give me your thoughts. What did you think of Sunday's episode? What else stood out to me? So now Tasha, Holly, and Tommy, which those scenes between the three of them, they are the worst actors on that show. And then to have all of them in one scene together, it is agonizing for me. I don't know if it's just me or other viewers feel that way, but it's like, come on, can we try to limit the interaction among the three of them, please? And then when you throw Lala into the mix and her character of Keisha, which it seems like, given the new business that they're opening, which is a weave business, she's going to be more involved now because she owns a hair salon. Like, I'm just like, goodness gracious, as good as this show is, I wish the acting was a lot better. But anyway, so now Tasha, Holly, and Tommy are business partners, and they're basically, since they shut down the laundromats, are taking the dirty money from Tommy's drug dealing, which he still has going on and doing with Lobos, to try to make it clean. And we'll see how that goes. I think it's going to be interesting because we'll get an opportunity to see how, like, if it goes this way, to see how they build one of these front businesses, as we like to call them, from the ground up. And I just don't know. Like, we saw a little bonding moment between Tasha and Holly when Tasha was pulled over by the cops. And I thought that was an interesting scene, because there we saw the intersections of race and class front and center. We know Holly doesn't have a pot to piss in or a window to throw it out of. She has zero common sense when it comes to anything. Tasha is really the brains and the money behind the entire operation. And yet Holly, out of thin air and quick-witted, was to say, you know what, this is my nanny. And then Tasha went into her terrible Jamaican accent. I don't even know, Jamaican, Trinidadian, Caribbean accent to play along. But that was a seminal moment within the show, because it kind of, for once, we saw these two women genuinely on each other's side. And it showed that, hey, maybe this partnership is going to work out better than any of us thought it would. But I don't think it's going to last. I think one or the other is eventually going to turn on, the other person. I think that the interesting thing is, now that Tasha is putting herself in danger by supporting Tommy and this business, and we know that Ghost wants to get back into it now. And that's the other thing. And the investigation against Ghost hasn't ceased, because Greg Knox is still going hard. He's basically out here like the jilted lover. He's obsessed with Angela. He's obsessed with Ghost. He's fatal attraction, stalking both of them. But he's not going to rest until Ghost is behind bars. And so both of them are putting themselves in danger. Tasha's putting herself in danger by working with Tommy on the side business, and then Ghost trying to get back into the game, even though Tommy's not necessarily here for it yet, is willing to put himself in danger. And he's still being followed and investigated. Which leads me to my next thought of who is going to get to Ghost first? Everyone's after him. Kanan's gonna eventually, once he's healthy, which it seems like that'll be next week. He could barely move this week, but next week he'll be healthy enough to, get back to New York and be out in the streets. He's trying to get to Ghost. Tommy still needs to kill Ghost because that's the direction from Lobos, and he knows that it's something that needs to be done. And then Greg Knox is also trying to get to Ghost, not necessarily kill him, but see him locked up. So Ghost has at least 3 targets on his back that we know of. And who knows what those crazy club owners from across the street are into besides just owning a club. We saw how grimy and their questionable business tactics are in last week's episode when they just stole the DJ up from under him. So, Ghost is not someone that has a lot of friends right now. And that is something to definitely watch out for. I feel like the storyline with Tariq is interesting. We knew that this was going to happen. If you watch the talk back after the show or the behind the scenes after the episodes, Courtney Kemp kind of tuned us into that and said that, it would unfold in far as how Tariq, the son, responds to the changes within the family structure. So him taking the gun from Angela, bringing it to school, being suspended, that necessarily wasn't a surprise, but it was interesting. And I loved how Tasha bossed up in that meeting and ran it down. And in that instance, we saw how white privilege came into play and how Tasha wasn't here for it and was basically like, okay, so you're going to expel my son. What about this? What about that student? What about this student? What about that student? And said like, nah, we're not here for it. So yeah, a lot of different themes. There's white privilege. There's the intersection of race and class and gender, and then Blue Lives Matter versus Black Lives Matter. I'm here for it. Like this, the writing I felt in this show was better, and just kind of keeping your eyes on a lot of the different themes that were prevalent made this episode the best episode so far of the season for me. Where y'all at today? 929-227-4646. You guys, I want to hear from you. Let me see what else stood out. Tommy, I think he blew it. I think he blew it when him and Ghost had that interaction on the street. Or I don't remember exactly where it was, but it was like way at the end of the show, and Ghost told Tommy that Lobos wanted him dead. And instead of Tommy pretending that Lobos was dead, he basically confirmed that Lobos was alive. I don't know if Ghost picked up on that, but if I were Tommy, especially since that's what he was supposed to do and wasn't supposed to tell anybody that Lobos was alive, I think that might come back in some way or the other. Next week looks to be pretty interesting because we'll see that Kanan is on the move. And we don't know what's up with Dre. We saw him have an appearance in the preview for this episode or for next week's episode, but he wasn't at all in episode 3. So, yeah, we don't know what's going on with Dre. Is Kanan going to come back and try to get Dre back on his side? Or is Dre going to be loyal to Ghost? These are things that we don't know. Okay, we have a call. Thanks for calling All Sports Everything Radio. Who's there? Hello? Did we lose them? Are you shy? I think we lost them. Okay. Oh, they hung up. All right. If you meant to call back 929-227-4646. 929-227-4646. While we wait to see if that person calls back, I remembered that I did want to mention a little something about my Jets finally signing Ryan Fitzpatrick. So now that he got his contract, 1 year, $12 million, that means that he just better show up, show improve, and that's all I have to say. I really am not all that excited in the sense that he's better than Geno Smith, and that makes me more confident as a Jets fan. But I feel like he was very me first, and normally I'm all about athletes trying to get paid, but given his reputation, I feel like it was a very, very diva-ish move. But hey, he was able to hold out in a way to get the money that he wanted. And, you know, it is a 1-year deal. So I just hope that he plays like he has something to play for next year. And that's all I have to say about it. I'm not sad that Geno Smith isn't getting an opportunity. I really believe that Geno Smith is unfortunately not going to have much of a future in the NFL. And the reason I say unfortunately is because with black quarterbacks, I love to see them succeed. But in his case, I just don't think he has what it takes. And there is nothing. The fact that the Jets went so hard in terms of signing Fitzpatrick and didn't even want to explore what an offense run by Geno Smith could look like says a lot about what they see in him, which I don't think they see much, unfortunately. And it's risky. So they said that he still has a place on the team, Geno Smith. But that's if, you know, God forbid, Fitzpatrick gets injured. If Fitzpatrick gets injured, then Geno has an opportunity to come in and prove that it was a mistake. But I don't see that happening. I don't feel like it's going to be proven that it was a mistake. And I feel, and as much as the players want to support the guys and, you know, they talk about, they say all of the right things when it comes to supporting the players who are there. Brandon Marshall just made a huge bet with Antonio Brown on the Steelers. They bet a Porsche versus a Rolls. Whoever ends up with the most receiving yards by the end of the season, whoever ends up with the most receiving yards by the end of the season has to give the other person their car. That bet would not have been made if Geno Smith was the quarterback. I'm just saying. I think our caller called back. Oh, we have a different caller. Hi. Thanks for calling Thanks for calling All Sports Everything Radio. Who's calling?
Hi, this is a different caller. Your parents, your father, and your mom.
Oh, goodness. Hey, Ma. Hey, Dad. We only have 1 minute left, so you got to keep it brief.
I know, and I just called in real quickly to just comment on Power, and I didn't hear you talk about Karen Bessette. That is the hotel investment owner who wants to open a club.
Okay, so what did you think about that?
Well, I think that that's going to cause some problems with Angela and with Ghost.
I agree.
Quite frankly.
I think so, too. especially because their relationship is already shaky. It's not solid at all. And we saw that last night in which, they're already second guessing if they are moving too quickly, like moving in together, introducing the kids to her, because as I said, in terms of timing, like there are a lot of unresolved issues that just happened days ago. So I agree. Thanks for that comment. We've got to roll. I'm getting a wrap-up signal. I want to thank my listeners for tuning in, my parents for calling, the comments on Facebook Live. And yeah, I want to thank my guest, Takara Rooks. You guys check out her website, gofundme.com, Sean Rooks, if you'd like to make a donation. And I will talk to you guys next week. Have a great week, you guys. Bye.
When you say you love me, it doesn't matter. It goes into my head as just chit chatter. You may think it's egotistical or just very free, but what you say, I take none of it seriously. And even if I did, I wouldn't tell you so. I'd let you pretend to read me, and then you'd know. Cause I hate when one attempts to analyze. In fact, I despise those who even try to look into my eyes to see what I am thinking. That dream is over, your yacht is sinking. I tell all of you, like I told all of them, what you say to me is just paper thin. Word. Girl to try to play a man out. Now take the money and again, then break the hell out. No, that's not my strategy, not the game I play. I admit I play a game, but it's not done that way. Truly, when I get involved, I give it my heart. I mean, my mama sold my body, I mean, every part. But if it doesn't work out, yo, it just doesn't. It wasn't meant to be, it just wasn't. So I treat all of you like I treat all of them. And what you say to me is still paper thin. In one ear and right out the other. Herders mumble jumble. Lover, I don't pay attention, I don't concentrate. You ain't got the bait that it takes to hook this. Sucker, you missed. I put feelings aside. I know who I am. My name is Light. Is your name Sam? Cause if it is, step off. Grab your coat and get lost. Wrap your scarf around your throat and go back and catch the boat and hit the road, Sam. Don't you come back no more, no more, no more, no more. Hit the road, Sam. Don't you come back no more. So now I take precautions when choosing my mate. I do not touch until the third or fourth date. Then maybe we'll kiss on the fifth or sixth time that we meet. Cause a date without a kiss is so incomplete. And then maybe I'll let you play with my feet. You can suck the big toe and play with the middle. It's so simple, unlike a riddle. It's as easy as counting to 1, 2, 3. In other terms, letters L-Y-T-E. I'll tell you, and all of you in the back and in the middle, in the front. Yo. That's it, paper thin, word up. So like, checking out. Yo, like, checking out. Dedication to my DJ K-Rock and the place to be.